Unlike who I stand to look like today, I used to have no friends, an outsider to the circle. And once in a while, an invincible surge of loneliness would encroach upon my lungs. And as a second grader at the time, I still remember reading this one book that our homeroom teacher read to us. The book was about Bob. Bob bullies those who he wanted to be close with. But rather than ostracizing Bob from the class, the other protagonists decide to approach him and become friends. So the story told us that mean kids are mean because they want to be friends. But sitting around the edges of the classroom, I wanted my friends to recall me when they read this book. I wanted Jessie, the most popular friend at the time, to project me on Bob. And I was a perpetrator in the room who frankly wanted to be a victim, a frail victim who was unconditionally loved and cared for. I wanted to feel both powerful and vulnerable at the same time. When I was in second grade, I thought this irony was indescribably and somewhat disgustingly ugly. I think maybe what this little girl needed was a hand of compassion. Maybe it was just another attention from her peers or her parents that, hey, maybe this is the love you need, not to feel lonely, not to bully others who you want to be close with, but rather learn your lesson to be closer with others through the ideas of being more sociable or more kind to another. So that's why in this speech, I want to bring you two examples of how significant compassion is in our society and how we lack most of them through the examples of two. The first example is a personal anecdote that I want to bring up. As a dancer, I faced a lot of reproaches and obstacles while being with my parents, obviously because there are conservative, somewhat stubborn Asian parents, the more stereotypical Asians that you could imagine. And my passion to dance did not cease with them being my obstacle, them opposing to my passion and my zeal. So through in dance school, I would perform in big assemblies, I would perform in talent shows, and every time I did so, my parents would yell at me not to do so. And frankly, this decreased my self-confidence in social relationships, which led to the things like loneliness, led to things like less self-actualization, and the stresses that immutably created flaws in the life and me being able to accrue happiness in the ways that I wanted to. So I demand that my parents would have been better off in my relationship with others if they provided me a sense of compassion, the compassion of my child having a passion in which she could relieve her stress on and live her life as a unique being, not just another ordinary Asian that they wanted me to become. So I think the idea of compassion is much more significant in human relationships, especially in families where you are more intimate with the opponent. Compassion is not only needed within services and somewhat like humanitarian actions, but someone who you care for, someone who you strive to work for and create a better connection with. And with this, I want to move on to my second example of the grander scheme of things in South Korea. In South Korea, I could definitely tell you with positivity that the polarization has not been as steep and as significant so far in our history. Things like gender conflicts, political conflicts, xenophobia, and Islam problems, all these conflicts have stirred up so much polarization and conflicts and tensions in the society where it's even more difficult for you to talk about topics that are very much cherishable, but then still controversial. And I think the solution to these polarization and conflicts would be compassion to each other. It would be the empathy that, hey, I am willing to listen to whatever you have to discuss because I care for you. And the differences that build up within that conversation or discussion is less important than me protecting you as a person with your identity, with your gender, with your political scheme of things, or the type of ethnicity you might have. This idea of social collectivity stems out from compassion because we care for the people that constitutes our community. So in conclusion, across my personal anecdote in the grander scheme of South Korea, I want to convince you that compassion is definitely an element that we have to strive for because humans are social beings and we live collectively. Caring for each other and showing empathy will be a key factor in solving our greatest conundrums in society, the conflicts and the polarization that we're ought to solve. Very proud.